have to wait a year. So that means you can't just set it on your birthday every year. You have to wait 1 year and then go the next day. So just why don't you let me go within the week? Well, that's too hard to keep track of. I said, they've got things called computers.
We'll go 1 week at a time. Just keep punting them. That's fine with us.
You ready? All right, welcome to our City Council work meeting tonight, August 16th, 2017. We will begin with an invocation by Pastor Pete from the Cedar City Foursquare Church. Hey, yeah, surprise. And then
I'm
we'll...
having a hard time telling him and Tom apart over there. Oh, it's the beard.
Ouch. And then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mitch, our scout from Troop 342.
Thank you. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening and first of all, ask your grace to be with us. We're so grateful that you allow for us to live in this part of the country. It's unsurpassed beauty. It's unbelievable people. We're just truly grateful. But Father, tonight we recognize that there's a lot of challenges that face any group of people trying to make decisions about stuff. And so, Father, for each of these council members, I ask, Lord, that you would just place your hand of grace upon them, for our mayor and for all of the employees of the city. Lord, that you would help us to lead well and to govern well. Lord, your word's very clear that you have placed leaders in place and that government officials are placed where they are by your hand, and we ask that we would do right by you tonight. Father, keep us all safe. Keep this city and this county under your grace. Pray for a spirit of peace tonight, and that all of the decisions that are made would be the right ones as we come to you for wisdom. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Please join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I saw that book at the DI last night, about bought it for you. My cheese.
Thank you both for being here and being willing to participate in our meeting. Okay, we will next move on to our agenda order approval. Are there, first off, we need to excuse Councilwoman Hartley. She has some personal things that she had today, and so she will not be with us this evening.
Does that mean I get to keep her 150th anniversary of the fire department medal?
No.
Okay.
But thank you for asking.
All right.
You know,
Ventured, nothing gained, Mayor.
exactly. And I'm impressed that you ask. And
Just
some
didn't
people would
steal
just take
outright.
it.
Yeah.
So, all right, we'll now move on to our agenda order approval. Are there any items the council would like changed from the agenda? And if not, can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to council business.
Mayor, it was this afternoon 4 years ago that I found out that I'd moved from 5th place to 4th place in the primary election. And so I say to the candidates, congratulations and don't give up. That's right.
And the top four, our top four candidates are, pretty much, I think they're all here.
Yep.
So we have Rich Gillette and Bruce Hughes and Scott Phillips and then Ron. So congratulations.
Brian, what happened to our softball team today?
Brian Dangerfield, Director of Leisure Services. I think you know the answer, or
I
you
don't,
just,
I
okay.
don't.
We were following it during our meeting this morning, and it looks like we beat Asia Pacific to win a consolation game. So I was thinking it was a double elimination, but our Cedar National under 12 women or girls won today 2-1. And judging by the box score, it looks like they had to throw somebody out at home plate for the final out, which would have been the tying score. So I haven't talked to anybody from there, but I mean, that's the farthest any team from Cedar City has ever gone. And we intend on doing something to honor them and to have some presence at the ballpark to honor that. I mean, go to the World Series.
Riding on a fire truck, that's the answer.
That's something that kids, I mean, dream of doing, and it's just amazing that they're able to go there, and hopefully we can go back. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. It's like lightning in a bottle, but congratulations to them. They did pool play, and they won their last game of the pool play, which meant they had to play the very best team, the number 1 seeded team in the other pool, and they hung in there on Monday until like the 4th inning. Then they dropped a couple of runs to, I think it was like 7-5 was the final, or 7-4 final score. But today they won 2-1.
Good. Thanks.
Are there any other? Yes.
Mayor, I wanted to give a report on some water issues. We met last week in our groundwater management plan committee meeting, and that is a committee that was established per the direction of our state water engineer. And it's a committee, what is it, Paul Tanavis? Is that right? Yeah. Paul serves on that committee, and we met last week, and so just to review our basin in this valley, the safe yield of our basin of what water we can extract from our aquifer, the safe yield is 21,000 acre feet. And we're using 28,000. So we're in the hole about 7,000 acre feet. And that's one of our biggest issues right now in this valley is that mining of the aquifer. And one thing that's really exciting, there's 3 things you do to solve the water problem. You have conservation, or you recharge, which is putting the water back in the aquifer. We have excess water, we put it back. And the other is importing new water. And one of the main topics of discussion, we invited Senator Vickers and Representative Westwood to our meeting, and we're discussing some options of conservation in regards to agriculture. The agriculture community is a very important part of our heritage and economy in this valley, but they use about 80% of our water, which is a lot. And so as a city, we encourage conservation, but because we're only using about 20% of the water, our conservation doesn't impact the problem as much as other entities like agriculture. And so one of the things that we've discussed is how to encourage farmers to conserve water because they're using so much. You've all seen the pivots that are in the hayfields, and on a hot, windy day, the water's spraying out, and about half of it's blowing away, and a lot of it's evaporating. And so one thing they're doing is they're extending bubblers. They're the nozzles that come down with the mist that sprays. They're trying to extend those down. They put them. They come down with one of their nozzles, and then they tee it off, and they have 3 bubblers. So the droplet, it produces a droplet of water instead of a mist. And what it's doing is it's applying that water closer to the soil, and so it's more efficient, and it doesn't evaporate as bad. And so there's about 7,960 acres that are being irrigated with pivots right now in our valley. And the cost, Brent Hunter is a chairman of our Central Iron County Water Conservancy District. And Brent, they're doing an experiment with the Extension Service right now where they've put these bubblers on one of his pivots, and they're actually measuring the ground water content and seeing how it's doing. And it's proved to be very successful. And it's proven that some of these technologies can actually save at least 30% of water with ag. And so we're running a 7,000 acre deficit. But if you figure that if we can get the agriculture community to conserve 30%, if you take 28,000 acre feet times 80%, and then multiply that by 30, that's 6,750 acre feet. So that almost, just by them conserving 30%, almost balances our aquifer, which is a big deal. And then you add on top of the recharge we're doing, which we think could be another 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 on the high side. That's just gravy. So what that does is it extends the need of putting in an expensive pipeline to the West Desert to import that water. So it buys us a lot of time. And so one of the things right now that Rocky Mountain Power is doing is they're paying, actually, if these farmers will convert their pivots to this water saving device, they'll actually pay 1/3 of that cost. And one thing
What's in it for them?
Well, the power company, they want you to conserve power because they don't have to build another power plant. So they want people to, that's why they encourage power savings, because they don't, it's so difficult and expensive for them to build more power plants. They encourage conservation with power. And so because farmers, that's one of their biggest expenses is power. It also saves them a fair amount of money and can help give them a return on investment. Just in power savings can help pay for this conversion. Another thing we've talked about too is they calculate it's about $82 per acre. So that'd be about $800,000, almost $1 million to convert all of the farmers in this, this irrigating with pivots on the 8,000 acres in our valley. It's about $1 million. And so we're also asking the state to maybe kick in. We're investigating the option of having the state help, because we feel that state is partly responsible for over allocating the water rights. So it's partly their problem. And so we're asking them to maybe pony up some money, maybe pony up some money. So if Rocky Mountain ponies up some, they pony up, and then the farmers, we can, that's going to be one of the key elements we're going to put on our groundwater management plan is this conservation with agriculture. And I just wanted to give that report. It's exciting. The other thing that they're doing, they're actually burying drip lines in the ground for agriculture, where that's very efficient. It's actually applying the water to the roots, and there's no waste, no evaporation. And that's very expensive. That's another option. But there's a lot of neat technologies that are emerging that's really helping with this issue. So we're excited about that. Want to give that report.
Thank you.
Good.
It's nice to hear everything that we've talked about for so long that it's actually happening. So, wonderful. All right. Are there other council comments? No? Oh, it's a quiet bunch tonight. Okay. Then we will move on to staff comments with the swearing in of our newish police officer, David McIntyre. I will. And you get me.
Jimmy Roden, Cedar Police, council staff, and Mayor, thank you for letting us have time to swear in Dave McIntyre tonight. He probably looks familiar to you. He's had a successful 20-year career with us once already and retired, and so we were excited to have his experience come back to us. You want to just take a minute and introduce your family that you have here with you?
I've got here with me, I got my wife Jan and my daughter Heidi. Most of you probably know Jan more than you've ever seen me. But, yeah,
If
my
you
daughter
want to
Heidi.
take pictures for the swearing in, you come around here if you like.
And our officers, they're hiding in the hall. You really can come in.
Oh, your kid, this is what happened. Yeah, right there. Perfect.
Yeah, over there.
I do solemnly swear that I will support, obey, and defend
That I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States of America
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah.
that I will discharge the duties
That I will discharge the duties
of my office with fidelity.
of my office with fidelity.
Congratulations.
As is tradition, we'll have his wife Jan come up and pin his badge on.
You can't stab him, he's got his vest on.
No drawing blood. Again. So, retirement is
Oh, yeah, you have to come this way.
Gonna have a nice season. back on there. Yep. That's good.
And see, this is the prime example of what happens when you try to retire. All right, we will now move on to other staff comments with Chief Phillips.
Mike Phillips, Fire Department. So as Fred alluded, there's a coin in front of you. That's for our centennial celebration. That'll be the 26th of August from 10 o'clock until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At noon, we'll have cake, and then you'll get to hear from Chief Bentley and Chief Douglas. So that's kind of our celebration. I want to give you guys that. Also, just for your information, Firehouse Subs had their H2O for Heroes drive. They gave us over 70 cases of water. This summer, we collected over 200 cases from the fire. So we took and delivered all those to law enforcement and put it in their back room. Thank you.
Tell me that date again, Chief.
Yes.
Saturday, the 26th.
You didn't say where.
At the fire station number 1. Sorry, I didn't say
The
that.
main fire
Main fire
station.
station, 291 North, 800 West,
And that's what time?
from 10 o'clock till 2 o'clock.
10 to 2.
Yeah, noon will be the speakers.
What day was it?
Maybe I'll get Paul to talk too.
26th.
Okay.
Oh, 26th, Saturday.
26. Yeah. that was mine.
Mayor and Council, Brian Dangerfield, Director of Leisure Services. Sorry, I'm going to be standing up a lot today, but I wanted to make sure you're aware of the Fire Road Race that's going to be happening this Saturday. It starts at Main Street Park at 7:30 in the morning. They'll go down Main Street, up Canara Mountain Road, and up toward Kolob Reservoir, and then come down through Cedar Highlands. And so we ask people to be cautious as they're out walking on the trails, and they're going to be coming down through East Canyon Park and then turning by the Veterans Memorial Park and then finishing by Main Street. So that'll be from 7:30 till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Did anyone see the man with the 4 mules, the 2 wagons that says repent and be baptized going up the canyon?
He's been all over town.
Oh, well, I
Was in
missed
the
it.
Post office parking lot yesterday.
Just haven't had the chance to repent yet then.
There you go. All right, are there any other staff comments?
Sounds like a person.
Okay, then we will move on to our public agenda with our public comment portion. If there is anyone here that would like to address the council about an item that's not on the agenda. Yes. Just make sure you state your name, or I will stop
Oh,
you
I
halfway
bet he
through your
will.
comment.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think we have to prompt.
Say my name so I don't have to. I'm Bruce Hughes, a candidate for city council. I wanted to give you a report on an event that happened in the last couple of weeks that put Cedar City on the map in a big way. At the Salt Palace in Salt Lake, the county agent convention was recently held. It's the first time in 53 years that it's been held in the state of Utah. County agents are ag guys that are responsible for a specific county in the United States. Not every county in the United States has a county agent, but most do. Interestingly, more in the eastern United States than in the western United States. And in charge of that convention was our own Chad Reed with USU Extension. He was co-chair for that event and just about went crazy with it. So he convinced the Cedar Livestock Festival board to get a booth up there. We went up and did a booth. We had our handout materials for the upcoming Cedar Livestock Festival that we have coming. We also had an antique Alice Chalmers tractor as part of our booth, which was an absolute magnet. Now we found out who's a Farm All, who's a John Deere, and who's a who the tractor lovers were. And there were some pretty emotional people there when they saw that tractor. Immediately behind our booth was Staley West, who had a tractor, a baler, and one of their steamers. And so that was a huge attraction. Most of the county agents had never seen that.
Were they making steam?
No, they weren't. We were indoor. There was no steam. So it was interesting. We had two well-represented groups from Cedar City. Most of the people in attendance, as soon as the convention was over, were headed to guess where? Zion, Bryce, North Rim. And so we were able to tell them they would be driving right through Cedar City to come through. The reception we got for our festival was pretty mind-boggling. People were absolutely blown away at the events that we were having at our festival. And we actually had a group from Florida who have an agricultural heritage festival that we spent quite a bit of time with. They're going to bring a group to our festival in October to learn how we do it. They said, now, we've been working on this festival of ours for 10 years, and we've got about a $4,000 budget. And we said, well, we've got a $70,000 budget, and
See, now if
showed
they would
them all
herd 1,000 alligators down their main street in Florida, I bet they'd have a budget there too.
and they don't do that.
See,
And they are just amazed that we run sheep down the middle of town. So I wanted to give you that report. It went very well. We really did put Cedar on the map with these thousands of county agents who were in attendance, and Chad Reed deserves a pat on the back. Now, he also brought back information. There was a booth there called Dragon Lines, if you've seen those, and they were making a very big push, 30 to 40% water savings involved with what their technology does. And you're spot on as far as the agriculture community has to be firmly on board if we're ever going to solve our water problem. Now, one interesting aspect to that is much of our agriculture we raise here is exported out of Iron County, which means we are exporting our cheap water to other areas, and that's an additional element that ag needs to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else? If not, then we will move on to our business agenda with our public portion. Item number 1, consider second amendment of the Academy at Cedar Mountains PUD Phase 1. I don't know exactly who.
there you go.
Ken's going to present this, or Kit's talking.
Arlo.
Who's doing it?
It's Dragon Lines.
So this is just amended to just changed a couple property lines. This is Arlo Fossen with Go Civil Engineering. Sorry about that. I was looking at the lower down on the list and just going through that one. So yeah, we're just doing an amended plat for this academy at what was it called? The Cedar Mountain Preparatory Academy. They just changed a couple things. They're just reworking some property lines to be able to get some buildings into different spots and just future planning.
All right.
This has been checked over by the surveyors and everything. So I think our boundaries are good and everything's in place.
No problem with it. It's just a very minor adjustment on that cul-de-sac on the end. This is what they were making. So
Does the council have any comments, questions? Not. We good with this on the consent? Wonderful. That was quick.
Thank you.
Thanks. Consider Diamond Z Arena lease agreement with SU track and field team for temporary practice and storage space.
Mayor and Council, Brian Dangerfield, Director of Leisure Services. I'd like to introduce a couple of our guests today. Head Coach Eric Hool of the SUU track team, and Derek Boozy, who's an assistant track coach. They both come with high credentials, and they came with a great idea to us. And I'd like to have them maybe talk about the reason why they'd like to do this, and then I can fill in with the details on what the proposed lease agreement is.
Hi, Eric Hool, track coach here at the university. If you don't know, track and field at Southern Utah lasts all year long. It's like we're starting with the distance team now, and they'll run all the way through November. And then we'll start the track team in October, and they run all the way through June. And we're in competition in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring. And in the fall, it's really easy. The weather's nice. In the wintertime, I can still run the distance runners out there, and they're fairly safe. And the sprinters, if we get the track cleared, they're fairly safe too. But jumpers trying to place their foot on a sheet of ice makes it a little difficult. And so we've wondered, and typically we do have some decent weather, but other times we have some pretty bad weather. And so in hiring Derek, Derek has some huge credentials coming in to us to work for us, and already have landed some of the best jumpers in the country, 7 foot, 7'2" high jumpers, and that will boost us in the big sky huge. But we need some places to jump, and so he's roaming around and he sees the ranch and starts investigating. And with that, I'll let Derek speak to you about it.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Derek Boozy. I'm the jumps coach for Southern Utah University. We're not soft to want to go indoors. I'm trying to have the best elite jumpers in the United States come to our university. And the only way to do that is to have somewhere where, not all the time, but from November through to March, we have the weather could be very changeable. The wind particularly, then the snow only 2 or 3 times. But that's a critical time because we start the indoor season in January. And it's essential that we have our high jumpers, long jumpers, and triple jumpers having a reasonable place to work out it. And I found this wonderful place where it's a large barn. It's Cross Hollow. If I walk up the hill where I live in Beacon Drive, I can see this beautiful building there. And it's used primarily for the horses and the ladies that ride them. I've only seen ladies riding them. And they have some archery. And of course, you have most of your events are in the summer, not between November and March. And I thought the Diamond Z area, that's the area, cemented area about 60 meters long by 20 meters, which is on the side of the offices and the restrooms and the cafeteria. So I think those who've been there will know which area I'm talking about. That's where we propose to put the long and triple jump runway and the sand pit and the portable pits for the high jump. And of course the short put, because I think you'll have a heart attack if we had them throwing hammers and discuses and javelins. It can be done, by the way, but I think Brian has ideas of having big fans that circulate the air, and until he puts that in, we can't decide where the nets could go, but the nets would be very safe. So we decided just a short putt right now, which would be either thrown into the sand, or they have an indoor shot, which when it hits the matted ground, it doesn't do any damage to anything. So everything is safe. And unfortunately, the PowerPoint is not working, but no, I'll let you just pass it along.
No, we saw that in our packets.
Oh,
you've seen it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, it was sent to us.
Very efficient. So he's covered all the ground. So I'd rather you ask me questions, and I'd be happy to answer them, because I don't know what may worry you.
So your entire pit for the high jump can be done on the concrete. You have padding all the way around so that...
Oh, yes, very comfortable. But since Fosbury jumped backwards in 1967, we've had wonderful pits because they land on their back.
Okay. I think it's a great use of a space that isn't getting used much that time of year, and would help our team to go crush the competition nationally.
Yeah, we intend to.
And the layout for this with the design doesn't look like it would impact the use of
Yes.
the indoor arena and
Perfect, because
riders.
I've talked to the horse ladies, and they said there'll be no problem as long as you're not going to firing guns in here and things like that. I said no, even though I'm, as you can see, a Louis L'Amour fan. Only the older ones will know who I'm talking about. By the way, I'm 75 years old, and I've been to 9 Olympic Games, and I've been the Olympic coach for Canada, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Australia, Korea, China, the United States, and India. And that's why I gave you my age, because you see, how the hell did I do all that? Because I've been around a long time. So that gives you some sense of where I'm coming from. And I was living in California, and I decided that I wanted to, my wife and sons and I decided we wanted to live somewhere up here. So we thought about St. George, we thought about Cedar City, and we thought about Flagstaff. Flagstaff is too expensive, and I understand not as interesting as here, because here you're dead center, you got the freeway running by, you have St. George, which is at 2,000 feet. This is 6,000 feet, and you got 9,000 feet at Bryan Head. And Coach Huel, he knows now, because I've been telling him every day, that you have the best high altitude training center in the world. And I've been to 79 countries in the world, so I think I know a little about what's around there. So this is a great city, beautiful. Just don't advertise it too much, because if it starts getting crowded, we'll have to leave, I think. But right now, it's okay.
And which of the countries did you visit to pick up that accent?
Ah, that's a very complicated question. I could stand here for 2 hours and tell you, but I won't. I'm British in the first instance. My great-grandfather came from England to India and started a coffee plantation in 1869. He married an Indian lady, and all the boozies from that generation. We had boozies in the United States, and boozies originally, if you study the DNA, we come from Flanders. That's on the father's side, great-grandfather's side. And his ancestors came to England 1,000 years ago with William the Conqueror. One of my hobbies is the DNA.
We need to sign him up as a member of our Chamber of Commerce and Tourism.
Yeah.
Bureau.
I'd be delighted to help you.
I think you would just
want to promote it too much.
No, that's true. That's true. Right on.
Just one last little thing that'd be fun is just have your jumpers jump on the back of the horse behind the ladies on the horse.
Letting you know. I know I'm a complete fun ruiner. Does the council have any additional questions? And then Brian can go through some of the lease aspects.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Sounds
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're happy to have you.
Yeah.
Brian Dangerfield, Director of Leisure Services. You can see with Derek's enthusiasm and credentials and Coach Huel's obviously, we've just, this commitment to excellence this community has as a parent. We've talked about the Little League World Series, the things that we're trying to do and doing things with excellence, and him being able to recruit some of the top jumpers in the world. If you've ever stood next to somebody jumping over a 7-foot pole, it's pretty amazing. So you'll have to do a little demo for us one of these days down there. But what we're proposing is they're not going to be using this every day. Obviously, they'll want to do it at their own track as much as they can. But when it's bad weather, they'll come over. And so what we're proposing is just a simple $10 a day per day use, and that's during our regular hours. If they're proposing to be able to store, have a Connex box out there, and we'll have them put it in a place that won't impact the rest of the work that goes on out there. And as Derek said, there isn't a lot of events that this would conflict with. Even if there were scheduled, they can move these, not easily, but they can move these out of the way if necessary. We're also proposing, if they have to come in after hours, to have a $10 per hour fee, $15 per hour when they have to use heaters to heat it up. As you know, there's no insulation out there, so it can get a little chilly, but there won't be any snow on the ground. And then if they have to turn the lights on, but they're going to be there mostly during the daytime hours, and they can always, if they have to turn the lights on, there'll be a fee from that. They've already submitted their insurance policy, releasing the city from liability from injury and from damage of the theft of equipment. So
the heating, is it for the small space? How is that going to happen? Because it can't be $15 an hour to heat that whole arena.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the whole arena. They'd just do it probably while they're waiting. I'm not sure, Derek, what you'd imagine.
If we use this, we bring our own heater and blow the air, hot air.
Like a salamander kind of a
To
thing.
the area where the athletes will be hanging around.
Yeah, standing, not necessarily jumping. So
They'll be reasonably warm too, because they'll be warmed up.
What's amazing is in our master plan, we studied and realized that there is a need for a field house facility, both for SUU and for our program, so we don't have to be out in the snow. I see our kids playing soccer out on they go out and shovel the snow off the field there. So we're glad that we have the ability to do this, and we think that this is a extremely reasonable rate, but one in which they'll have to pay something to use the facility, and we would bill them. Larry and his staff would accumulate what the totals were and then bill them monthly for this. We just want to be able to be supportive too.
The arena management folks, they're feeling good about this.
Larry would be here tonight, but he's out getting ready for an event. So absolutely, I cleared it with Larry, and I go, Larry, if this interferes in any way, because this, with the understanding, this is an equestrian facility, and it was donated by the Livestock Association, and so we want to respect their use of the facility. But where the cement is virtually not used during those months that we're proposing.
Great. Does the council have any other questions? And if not, are we good with this on the consent agenda?
Yep.
Thank you both so much for coming. All right. Item number 3, consider final plat approval for the 3rd West PUD.
Arnold Fossum with Go Civil Engineering. So Mayor and Council, what we've got before you for your consideration is the final plat for this. This is just off of 300 West and about halfway down the road there. Just a PUD with some townhouses. It's shown with the parking, so it'll be fairly self-contained, and just add a little bit of more housing down the road there. Any questions on this one?
All the legal requirements from the city have been met. We've had the agreement signed, so we're just waiting for approval.
I know we saw this in the planning commission.
So does this now take in the house that's still sitting there?
No, this will be
Okay.
all new stuff.
It's a very original name.
And we got it wrong. So
Getting seasick, kid.
Oh,
Somebody messes up my computer. Right in this area right here.
yeah.
You look confused. You good? All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Is there anything? Do you have anything else to add, either Tyler or Kit? No? Okay. Are you good if this goes on the consent?
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Item number 4, discussion of use of the land at the Hills Recreational Complex for the proposed garden at the Hills.
Mayor and Council, Director of Leisure Services, Brian Dangerfield. Sorry about that. I don't know if you have any questions. Tom Comstock came last week and gave a really good presentation on what their plan is for this land. I don't know if Tom, if you'd like to come up and maybe answer any questions, but this afternoon the Leisure Services Advisory Board met and we discussed some of the issues and the impact that this would have. And with anything like this, again, going back to the master plan process, what we discovered is we encourage citizens to come together and find a purpose and have a community champion and identify land, venues, and resources to make things happen, just like we did with the ice rink, and see what getting people together for a purpose can do to the city. A couple of concerns that were raised were identifying how much money it would cost to do a project like this, what the ongoing operation and maintenance costs were, how we might be able to create a water saving type of kind of format or an idea that possibly this could almost be a demonstration gardens to show people how they can do their landscaping to save water. Las Vegas has a good example. There's a place called the Springs Preserve where they show people how to do that. And so there's many ways that were brought up today on how this could possibly go. And maybe Tom could come up and, oh, you're already right beside me. Scared me there for a second, just like in the movies. There you are. We talked about possibly having local companies be able to have plots of land and come in and be able to do their thing in those plots of land and possibly have a lease from the city. But when all was said and done, we felt, the Leisure Services Advisory Board felt that we need to have some type of written agreement with an entity to hold someone accountable because, volunteers, we rely on them. We're relying on them for our Fire Road event and our half marathon event and for a lot of things, Shakespeare, summer games, you name it. But we need to have long-term a commitment that this is going to be maintained in the proper fashion and that there's some consequences is not the right word, but we just need to know how we're going to be able to engage and work with a private group with the city like we have with other entities. So, Tom, did you want to add anything to what I've said?
Tom Comstock, Just Serve Specialist. One of the things that we're looking at is we'd ask that maybe the city help us with some of these projects, but we're looking at inviting landscape specialists, especially those that have their forte being in irrigation. And if they were to develop a plan and that they could assist us in designing that so that it was a light of a burden of approving that and then assisting us in installing that and then allowing them to put a sign up in the gardens that advertised the fact that they were specialists in this and that would enable them to maybe make contributions to this cause and then commit to assist us in maintaining us. We'd also invite organizations, Lions Club, Rotary, congregations from all faiths to assist us in this maintenance and work side by side, whether it be Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, all of these organizations, and take a section, as Brian said, and say, this is your section, be proud of it. And as a result of that, have ongoing maintenance and oversight in that regard. The objective is to have the city be able to approve it, but really let the citizens take responsibility of it and be proud of what they do as working in a collaborative effort to improve the city for the gardens on the hill and be able to conserve water, as Councilman Cousins indicated, because we do know that if you have ground cover other than grass, it can save 30 to 50% more water than other types of ground cover, such as the fields and any other type of park. And of course, add an extremely beautiful area of the gardens up on the hill. I'd certainly invite questions.
So I can bring up a couple of things really quick for your consideration. We can use the ice rink as an example of the public-private partnership type. With them, we did have a formal entity that was established so that we could have a lease with them, have the contracts, have those types of things. It was still very volunteer-based, but there was, still the entity of who we could have agreements with. And also the business plan type of a plan for what would be done is similar to what we've required or requested with the ice rink type of a group. That's just one of those to consider of where we've done these types of things with other groups. That is what we have asked for them.
So it'd be like a nonprofit organization, Garden on the Hill, or something to that effect.
Like a nonprofit, like a 501c3 nonprofit.
We haven't looked into that, but it's certainly something worth consideration. I don't anticipate you're going to get the churches as a whole, the faith groups, to absolute put a commitment in writing, but based on the community as a whole, I think there's going to be no problem getting a commitment from them. And then, of course, we want to invite businesses, which I think we have many that would assist us in committing, along with those individuals that were in construction, landscaping, and various different occupations that will step up to the plate in assisting us there.
And if there's an entity like that, it can help with the fundraising.
Correct.
So having the separate entity helps a lot with the fundraising aspects, because then people, if they donate, they know how to donate, where to donate, and that it's going to said project.
Absolutely.
I think the first year is ideal in the fact that it's going to be almost 99% labor in setting the stones and getting things put in place. There won't be a lot of material that needs to be purchased. It'll be mostly manpower involved with that, and that gives you a chance to see how well things gel and how the organization works before the city or anyone else begins to commit actual dollars to buying sprinkler lines and valves and those kind of things.
Actually, the first period is going to be planning.
Yeah.
And to create a master plan that is certainly acceptable and as gorgeous as you could possibly imagine. And that planning period may take some time, because we want, it's a lot easier to plan and do something right than, do it by the seat of your pants.
Troubles go away if you plan it right.
That's absolutely correct, Councilman. So we want to do this. We've got already volunteers that are landscape architects and such that are willing to step up to the plate with no fee whatsoever. And we'll collaborate with all the different organization face, whoever wants to participate, but yet try to keep that committee relatively small. Too many cooks in the kitchen can cause a problem. So that's absolutely great, though. Correct. The hardscapes are what would go in first, understanding that there will be some irrigation that has to be associated with some of those areas.
Tom, you might, one thing that came to my mind is the Central Iron County Water Conservancy District has several acres out on off of Westview Drive. And in conjunction with the Extension Service, Chad Reed and Candace Shabley, I believe, Candace, they've been, for years thinking of doing some kind of a nice, I think St. George has one that displays drip systems and a nice, you might talk to them. They might really be interested in partnering and doing some of these drip systems and things to demonstrate, low water usage systems. And so talk to Paul Monroe. He's our general manager. I can text you his contact.
Fantastic.
But talk to him. That might be something that you could get him involved.
We definitely want to demonstrate some types of those things while showing water conservation, but yet have an aromatic walking paths, water features type of thing that is a go-to type of place. Also contacting SUU, I think there's a great interest from their biology, horticulture type of environment for these students that can't wait for a project to be engaged in such as this. And I think we'd get some significant participation, as was indicated last week from the grade schools and middle schools that from the superintendent of schools. They want to participate in this also on an ongoing basis.
Doug Hall is our water conservation specialist with our district. So, get him involved too. He's got nothing better to do than help you with it.
Thank
We're
you,
very
Councilman.
free
I'm
with.
sure he'll agree with you wholeheartedly.
We're very free with Doug's time.
That's kind of you.
I would also pledge the support of our office, the Business Resource Center, to help you in your planning phase and help you in organizing
absolutely
an entity that could do this.
Thank you.
Function for you. So. Yeah, I think, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think we're excited about this public-private partnership and the opportunity to do something like this. We just want to really help you do it in a planned way and
And for a
help
warm
it
up,
be
let's
successful.
remember that on Saturday, we're going to be
That's right.
cleaning Sage Drive. Get everyone a chance to chop a few sage brushes.
And that's a good warm up.
Yes.
You know, the critical aspect, or one of them, is of course, and I'm sure you'll get to this at probably a later meeting, is the commitment from the city, so that we can go to all these different organizations and say, you know, the city stepped up. Would you please step up too, because we want to make our city a better place to live, and you have the chance to do that now. So
Here's kind of some next steps as to where we go from here. From here, it seems like the council is interested in this, but if we could have your like entity 501c3 that created so that we could enter into a lease type of a thing to work on this and start the planning phase so that everyone is on the same page before, you know, we get too far down, just like we've discussed, and make sure that it falls in line with your vision and our parks vision and the council's vision. If we can do those, I mean, that's pretty much how we've done these types of things in the past, is we get the plan, we get a entity that we can lease with or work with, and then we can go forward with completely finalizing all of the agreements.
would maybe enlist Councilman Isom there and Brian Dangerfield, we can discuss that. We Just Serve is certainly it's a volunteer organization, completely volunteer. And so we can discuss those matters and see if we can come up to something for the improvement of our city there.
Perfect.
Any other questions I might?
That's kind of the general consensus from the Leisure Services Committee, was the fact that they didn't really see that the council able to approve anything without a plan to start with, something that, you know, like sink their teeth into and see, you know, what's going to happen. So they felt like that's the kind of the position we're at right now, that we need to get involved, and that may involve some of our city staff. As mentioned with Leisure Services, probably our engineer and some others, to make sure the uses that are acceptable there near that dam, which I've expressed to you in an email, that there's some things we can and cannot do in that area, and that needs to be identified. So there's some real early planning things, I think, before we get to approving much of anything. As the mayor mentioned, that's kind of what they discussed today in that meeting.
Absolutely. Councilman Adams, I guess that if we could at least approve that, the Just Serve Committee as it currently exists is granted, our authority to engage in the planning of this, so that we can present something on a more formal basis here, knowing that we can't enlist all of the people we want to enlist within the community until we have a formal commitment. But I think that would be,
I think, your planning can just be between you and two other people at your kitchen table, and bring it back in a few weeks or months and show us what you came up with.
Councilman, we invite you to that meeting.
There you go. You got a German chocolate cake on the table.
Yes, you can start
Yeah.
the planning process, getting that organized so that the pictures are beautiful of what could be, but needing to know what we really are looking at and in what areas and kind of how we want to proceed. I think that's the next step, is really looking at this area of land and what we want to do with it. So we can get some sort of a plan, and then if you can work with Councilman Isom and them on getting the entity so that we have the one that we can formalize an agreement with, then those are kind of the next two steps on where to go.
Okay.
2 cards here.
Okay.
Mine and Fred's.
Okay. Then do you want us to work directly with you or Brian or kind of collectively?
If you have a meeting sitting around the table, you don't need the cake, but I'd like to be happy to come and see what's going on.
Would the cake be more beneficial?
Oh, yeah.
But work
Say no to cake.
and include like Brian and Wade and some of them on and
Absolutely.
Kit, so we make sure that we don't mess up anything with our
How could
Lake
it
on the
be?
Hills.
You don't do those kind of things, right?
No, we don't do anything to mess up the Lake on the Hills liner. Right, Kit?
And in a separate meeting, we can talk entity and the migration of an entity. You don't have to have a 501c3 to get started. We could do a nonprofit corporation and do it very quickly. I'm not an attorney. We have plenty of those. But we could
Yeah.
talk. you
I'm
through
sure
that.
Paul would like to lead that, or Tyler, I'm sure they'd like to
Yeah.
take the,
So
very good. Anything else?
Okay.
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
Tom?
Okay, we will now move on to our staff portion with item number 5, considering a local fire agreement.
Mike Phillips with the Fire Department, here to discuss the proposed interlocal agreement between Enoch, Iron County, Canaryville, and Cedar City. So to start off, Kit's clicker's not working. Maybe not. Kit, can you hit the next slide? It's not wanting to go forward. So this is the entire county is shown with the fire protection of all the fire departments in Iron County. We're just this red outlined area here, just to give you the picture of the whole county. The next slide, Kit, shows the area that we cover. And so to give you general ideas, we cover out SR 130 to the Parowan Gap, out towards Lund on that side, out SR 56 towards Old Irontown, SR 14 up to the county line, and then I-15, the county line. So that's kind of the area that we cover, so you know what we're talking about. Next slide. So we've been in an agreement that we have written that we know of for 20 years, and we know for sure that we've had that agreement going back about 50 years, but we can only find it in writing for 20 years, so we'll talk about that. And the fire department services that we provide to the community have changed a lot over in that time period. We used to just go put out fires, and now we put out fires, we do the rescue tech specialties, we do a lot of fire prevention, and then there's been a lot of new legislative requirements that's been put on the fire department for us to do things. And so we were looking for a way to come up with an equitable way to share both the operational costs and the capital costs of the fire department.
Is this hazmat stuff as well?
Yes.
Like if up the freeway a long ways, something spills?
Yes.
Is it the same boundary you showed the Parowan that far north?
Well, when it comes to hazmat, we actually cover the whole 5-county area. So we'll go into Beaver and Kane and Garfield County. That's a separate
Different thing.
agreement.
Sorry.
Anyway, next slide. So our old agreement was based on strictly just the fire runs. And if you turn in your packet you have in front of you, there's one that says Fire Agreement 2015-16 billing. That is the old agreement, and it was strictly based on fires. It went off of a 5-year average, and it had a whole bunch of variables from the fuel costs to the volunteers. There was an attempt to take those variable costs and have a multiplier, so it was a little bit more charged to those outside entities. That agreement doesn't cover any of the preparedness costs. That's building stations and equipment, putting firemen in fire stations and all those things. And then it doesn't cover any of those prevention costs that we do. The one thing in the old agreement is all of the capital costs. So the fire station, the large equipment was on the covered by the Cedar City taxpayers. So the county, Enoch, and Canaryville never paid into those costs. The last piece of equipment bought by the county was the 1972 Mac. We no longer have it. So every piece of equipment we have now has been borne by the Cedar City taxpayers. The other thing about this agreement is very unpredictable. It's based on fire, so it goes up and down and ebb and flows. This year we've had a very active fire season. If you flip over to the last page, this just shows the proposed budget and how it's going to go out, and we'll just run through that pretty quickly. So what we did was we took and we looked at the taxable values of the property in Iron County. And so you can see there that Cedar City has $1.47 billion worth of property, and Enoch has $203 million. Canaryville is at about 18 million, then the Iron County's at $947 million. So we protect about $2.6 billion worth of property. Now, in that boundary that we showed you, that doesn't include any of the schools, the churches, any of those non-tax paying buildings. So those aren't included in it. So we just took that number and we took, if you take Cedar City's number of the 1.4 billion and you divide it into the 2.6 billion, that comes up with the percentage of protected value. So that's where we come up with the number that we're going to use for all the future billing and those protected values. If you look over to the far column there, it shows the current percentages. You see Cedar City's at 55% is what we're proposing, and it shows our current at 67%. If you go down to the bottom, it shows Iron County's protected value is at 35%, but they're only paying 23% of the budget. So we take those numbers, we go down, and I just used the fiscal 15-16 budget and took those actual numbers. That's the same numbers on that previous sheet, and it's that $1,074,000 times them by those percentages, which then give you those proposed operating cost shares. So Cedar City's is just shy of $600,000. Take the same formula and percentage, and we go down to the bottom there. There's an equipment preservation fund, and that's an attempt to take and have the county and Enoch and Canaryville share in those capital expenses. And that's a number that Paul and the mayor and I felt we were comfortable with, that $226,000 annually. It's then divided out by those same percentages. So Cedar City's is 55%, Enoch's is 7.67%, Canaryville's is 0.69%, and then the county's is almost 36%. That gives you your equipment preservation costs. The next column shows the proposed total costs. The next column shows the current model. So you'll see Cedar City's current model is $705,000. We're proposing it go to $726,000, which shows a $20,000 increase, $21,000 increase. Enoch's goes down by about $1,000. Canaryville's goes up by about $3,600. The county's goes up by about $202,000. So in that, those proposed increases will be distributed over a 4-year period. So as we go into this agreement, we'll take them, we'll increase it each year by that percentage until we come up to that full number there.
Seems like a very, very fair way to spread the cost based upon what's being protected by your department. And
the nice thing about
I'm not sure
this,
the county commissioners felt as enthusiastic about it as we do, but
Chief Orby was there, and he saw the shock on their face. But then, as the meeting went on, they saw that they weren't, paying their equitable share. Alma's words were he didn't like it, but he could see the, how did he say it? the value in it. So,
no, it's
the fairness
seems very fair.
I think that 4-year rollout kind of takes that sticker shock away from all the parties.
So in front of you, we have this agreement, and I'll have Tyler go over the agreement, the nuts and bolts of it really quick, and then if there's any questions.
So
You have so beyond exceeded your 5-minute time limit.
Did I? Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't keeping track.
Thank
Paul's
goodness-
supposed to give me
thank
the.
goodness
he didn't
you
give
did.
me.
bribed us.
Oh, I didn't
You
see
had
it.
your head down, you just kept going.
Oh, sorry.
Probably we each need another one of these.
I'll get another coin. Sorry.
You didn't even give them to this side.
So that means just in round dollars, the county will come up with an additional 50,000 over the next 4 years to phase in
Yes.
their full payment for. Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think just a couple points that I'll make here is by entering this agreement, Cedar City, the council is not giving up any of its power to establish what the budget is and to establish what the preservation replacement budget is as well. That power remains with the city, and that would go forth with that same agreement. The one other thing I wanted to bring up was the fact that we do enter separate agreements with some of these municipalities. Like with Enoch, we do some of their
Their wildland mitigation work.
wildland mitigation work. So if there's anything individual like that, that'll be an addendum that we do separately with that city, and that'll vary on some of the costs that this contract would entail.
Okay. I just had one other question, and it's just absolute curiosity. That's all it is.
Okay.
With respect to the Highlands, if they opt out and have their own little community up there, we'll be renegotiating these
So
deals?
this agreement makes it open so that we can go negotiate based on their property values, but there's also an addendum because of the type of area they would cover. There's different resources we would need to cover that. And so they wouldn't be getting it for the same price as Canaryville.
Good.
Work, Chief.
Thanks.
I like
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any additional, no other questions? No, he doesn't get more questions. All right. This is on the action agenda. All right. Item number 7, consider recommendations for wastewater effluent reuse.
So last January, Jonathan gave a presentation to the city council, which had various options on what we could possibly do with the effluent to get more out of it, to get more value out of it. And we had, in the interim in May, we had the fellows from the State Water Quality Board come down, and they gave us a presentation on some of the issues we might encounter if we wanted to do something more with our effluent. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had the Corolla folks. I see them in the audience. They came and gave us some ideas as well. We had a group of staff, which had Jonathan and Kit and myself, Eric Bonzo, he runs our wastewater plant, and Robbie Mitchell. We had Mayor Wilson and Mr. Rowley. Put all these options up on the whiteboard, talk about various options, talk about pros and cons of each one. And what we want to do is make some recommendations to the council, and the road forward would be to have the council adopt some of these recommendations, and we would put out an RFP to get a private engineering firm to get us more details as far as what might be involved with each of those options and specifically costs. So with that in mind, one of the things the group talked about is the level of treatment for the water. Right now our plant treats to a level 2 type 2 water. The group would recommend that any option that is exercised that brings that effluent water back towards this end of the valley where our pristine aquifer is located would have to be, we would make it type 1 before we would bring it back to this end of the valley. That's the highest classification the state has now, and that's fairly clean water. The next recommendation that committee made was that if some of our sister jurisdictions along the way would like to talk to the city about taking a percentage of that effluent and using it for their recharge purposes, that the city would embrace that and be willing to discuss with that entity. For example, I know Enoch City's interested in using some of the effluent. They haven't, in my conversations, identified a specific project yet, but they have some ideas of what they'd like to do. So they contribute roughly on the inflow side of the plant. They're around 10%. So the recommendation from the committee would be if Enoch City wanted to use about 10% of that effluent, and we could strike terms regarding financial splits, not only on construction, but also on O&M for some sort of recharge system, that the city would embrace that idea. As far as the recharge options that this group wanted to recommend for further study, one would be to work with a local agricultural operation on this end of the valley and relocate them to an area that we would control out by the wastewater plant, somewhere in our recharge area. We would develop it as a working agricultural operation. They would retire their water rights that they're pumping out of this end of the valley and move their whole operation to the north. That's one of the options. Another option would be to build a reservoir on this end of the valley and treat the water, then pump it into the reservoir and use it for the city's secondary irrigation system. The reservoir would be on the north end of town. There's some land north of Fiddler's Canyon that may be suitable for that. The large customers that we could connect to a secondary irrigation system would save some water that's being pumped out of the aquifer. We just wouldn't pump that. We would use the secondary irrigation. We're talking about entities like Canyon View High School and Middle School. Although they use the lake on the hills now, this would be more efficient and increase their ability to use that. The jail on the north end, there's some elementary schools, there's churches. We own a golf course. All of those would be rather large users. They would use it all summer. We'd have to build the reservoir big enough so that store it during the winter and use it in the summer. A third option would be to treat the water, pipe it back to this end of the valley, sell it in the summertime to an agricultural operation or agricultural operations. They would not pump water out of the ground to water their crops. They would use this water. That would save on the water coming out of the aquifer. And in the wintertime, we would find a recharge mechanism to use that. I know I've talked to Mr. Cousins. He had a fourth suggestion to offer into this. It's kind of a hybrid of a couple of those. There's a possibility of constructing a recharge basin further north of town, a little bit further north of town, and again storing the water in the winter and then just leasing it out to the farmers in the summer.
So can I talk about that for a minute?
Sure.
Doug, could you hand me that pointer? Kit, could you bring up that map? So I did a little research and I talked to one farmer out. One of the smaller recharge projects we've got going is out in the Enoch-Graben area, just north of Enoch. Particular gentleman owns some property out there, ag people out there that have pivots. But this up in 2016, we have 3 Cedar City wells out in Enoch, and in 2016, Cedar City pumped 1,147 acre feet out of those 3 wells. And Enoch City pumped 1,297. So it's about 50-50. So any water we send to Enoch, and I just would like this body to consider this option, any water we send to Enoch actually helps us probably as much as it does them. The 2 most severe depleted aquifers in the Cedar Valley are Quichapa and the Enoch-Graben. Those are the 2 most severely affected by the mining of the aquifer. And so Kit, can you bring that out a little further so it shows the sewer plant, wastewater treatment plant?
Got to get yourself some faster internet, hamsters.
Get me fewer hands on this computer so I don't have to figure out how to run it.
Oh, there's somewhere.
That too, yeah.
So are these our wells right here, Jonathan?
Yeah, those are.
And then we have another well up here, right? That's our biggest producing well up further north.
That's number 3.
That's it right there. So the other one's down in here then, right? Okay. So, Kit, where's the treatment plant?
Yeah, it's in this area, in here.
Up in there. Okay. So I believe this right here, the Enoch-Graben, I think, is right there. And I know a gentleman owns all this property right here. There's a pass, if you drive north of the Enoch Graben, there's a lot of pivots down in here, but there's some canyons that go up that go up towards I-15. There's a lot of little narrow canyons that go up there. One option is we take the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant, bring it down 2300 west, and then there's a power line that we could possibly get an easement. We could bring it down, go up this power line easement, and these are quite narrow, long, deep canyons. You could build an earthen dam across one of these canyons. This gentleman owns this property. You could build it. He would let us use the property. You could build an earthen dam, bring that water up into those canyons, store it just like we're going to do in Fiddlers, possibly, let it build up, and then during the summer, we lease it or sell it to these farmers in agreement if they will idle their water rights. And so, and I talked to Jonathan before the meeting. He felt like if there was some recharge that took place, we would possibly want to treat that to a level 1 as well, just to make sure we didn't have any problems with polluting the aquifer. But that's another option that would be far cheaper than taking it all the way to Fiddlers and building that secondary water system. It'd be millions of dollars cheaper, and it would benefit us too, because we pull water out of the Enoch area. 50% of our water comes from, not 50% of our water, but we equal Enoch in pulling water out of the ground. So that's another option that we might want to consider. It'd be so.
So with those recommendations, and including the option Mr. Cousins just brought up, the idea is to take those 3 or 4 options, whatever the council decides. You would send them to an engineering company and ask them to develop the costs and study the areas and look to really drill down and see how much this is going to be. Then we would have a little better feel for how we wanted to proceed, and then it would come back eventually to this body to say, okay, we like this one, but we don't like the price tag, or we like this one, or we don't like any of them. At that point, you could choose to not like any of them.
See if we could combine different aspects of them.
Sure, we could mix and match. Anyway, that's the idea.
And look at funding sources. And
We'll look at funding sources. The engineers could recommend funding sources. We have so for this, I think there's a possibility we can work with the water quality folks for this study. We can work with the water quality folks on some funding to help offset the cost of a study.
I mentioned to Mr. Rogers that there's a chance we'd be looking for an engineering company, and that one of our biggest concerns is that the temptation of that company to lean us towards the more expensive engineering side of things, and that would be the caution we would look for from any company that we took on, that we want the least expensive, best option, whether that meant a good contract for them or not on a future date. That was one of the concerns the committee talked about. Good point.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway,
and he replied that at least in their company, they've done that several times, that they've kept it under the positive side of it, not the negative side.
All right. So that is where we are on our lovely plan we've been talking about.
It
And
just cranks my tractor to see this going on. It's just all I'm looking for.
your terminology and phrases, there, we could start a book.
Alice Chalmers.
All right.
I'm
We
a
have
John
to
Deere
take
boy.
any
I'm
notes on
sorry.
that next week? You want us just to vote on all that?
So next week we'll have a vote. We'll put something in your packet. We'll include the option Mr. Cousins brought up. We'll include the other 3 options.
Would we be voting on one of the options, or would we be voting on just we want to look at options?
We want to look at those 4 options.
We're going to
All right.
proceed with those 4 options
Okay.
to send them to an, yeah.
If the really smart engineers in their work come up with a hybrid option they want us to consider,
great.
We'll look at that too.
And if anybody would like to go on a field trip and see this area, it's easy. It's a lot easier to see it in person. I would be willing to take you out and show you what I saw.
All right.
Be serving donuts on
And with
Yes.
that, can we get a motion to move into our closed session?
Wow, so soon.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we need a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilman Isom.
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Where's Jed? I was gonna shine this laser in his eyes. He left.
Okay.
Of course it
was. You guys.
Really?
Flat tires. Lots of stuff. Is it April Fool's
We doing?
Day?
Thanks for your interest and your help.
I'm gonna sick taste. You know what? You keep driving.
Yeah.
That's just what happens to your car, right? Leave it in the garage. It's all good.
I'm gonna be late to that meeting because I've got another meeting I gotta be to at,
Dude, you didn't give us coins on this whole side.
Then you wanna go? You wanna go? Anybody? Ron, you
I
wanna
won't be able
go?
to go, but I can't unless you want at noon.
Go, dude.
You can keep it. No. It's fine.
Canyons that go towards the freeway.
Fill them up with water they can't catch on fire, Lenore.
It's way cheaper than.
We use fire prevention.
Easy. There's one gentleman I talked to, he uses 1,500 acres a year. It'd almost be, you might have to have a booster pump, it'd almost have to be feeding.
If it doesn't
That'd be way
increase,
cheaper than go to fiddlers and doing all that secondary piping. Don't you think? So,
We have access to it, but we don't have to pay.
and it would benefit us a lot because we have our wells out there. And we would be good neighbors. So it'd make any capital if we were gonna help them.
Unless we end up needing it later on.
Did you buy my nephew lunch?
We could have them help us with the O&M and the construction of it because they wouldn't have to run a line just for 10%. You know, right? It would be a whole system that could, I don't know. You guys want to go out, just come to my cabinet shop and we're right out.
Eventually, we actually thought about.
Cousins Cabinets, COZZENS cabinets. It's 609 North 935 West. So if you go to 800 West, all the way to the bottom, hit Industrial Road, make a left, and then you're.
A hole it's sitting in, it just wasn't feasible for us.
Did you get the word that Enix got a job at the temple?
You want to go on?
Now we
Go. You got time at noon to go?
We put into that road, all that.
We'd be able to take it.
Oh,
Let us know. They're gonna buy sandwiches.
That's why we're trying to avoid.
Okay, go, hang on.
I might be, you just tell me, I'll let you know.
If you want to come, be at my shop, but they need to know so they can buy a sandwich.
Been looking at costs. Construction groups have all been looking at costs.
He's immortal.
Just hacking it to make it so it's compacted.
We've got a home builder meeting. That's
You guys means having to run just a strip of cement across where it would go out eventually later.
Or down.
Just so people don't drive. I did see in the email they said they.
So question, so.
Yeah, so nobody.
Our nitrate right now is about 5 parts per million coming out there. What would it be if we went to type 1? Would it be 0?
So there.
Is the filter TDS?
Taking out
And is TDS the
E.
same, is
coli.
nitrate a TDS? So would it remove the rest of the nitrate or not? Type 1?
We don't need to. We're like.
Isn't that the issue? We don't want the nitrate to pollute our aquifer?
What's the zoning requirement on storage? Probably need to come in.
It's the E. coli.
So are these guys?
I've told you, it's the E. coli.
Are they worried about E. coli?
Paul. I've been telling you this for a month. I'm glad you're finally. It ain't the nitrates, it's the E. coli.
Cool. Well, that'd be fun. Okay. Let's go. All right, thanks. Mayor, you want to go out tomorrow?